On December 1st, 2015, Pamela Myles-Johnson was found with a fatal gunshot wound to the head in Bourg, Louisiana. On the night of her murder, she was at home with her two nieces, ages 7 and 10. Pamela had been taking care of her nieces after they had lost their parents to a murder-suicide 3 years earlier. After Pamela was killed, the suspect kidnapped her two nieces and stole Pamela's 2013 Buick Enclave and drove 15 minutes from Bourg, Louisiana to Houma, Louisiana, before abandoning the car and the two girls. The girls would then find a woman on Wade Street and inform her of their kidnapping. They would tell Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office that the murder kidnapper was a tall, thin black man between the ages of 25 and 35 years old. During the investigation, they would talk to the victim's family and friends, and they would describe her as a very loving person who dedicated her life to others. Pamela's husband, Charles Johnson, and her were living apart after he filed for divorce over 3 months before the murder. Court records would show that Charles owed Pamela around $6,000 in past due rental property money. Due to this, he was scheduled to appear in court for contempt of court charges after Pamela was found murdered. Pamela also had a daughter named Christina Johnson. Christina would describe the family as perfect when in public, but behind closed doors, she said their family was not close at all and her parents fought a lot. She said they would even ride in separate cars to family gatherings. Christina would describe her mother as a very matter-of-fact person, saying that her mother would ask specific questions of Charles because she knew he would never volunteer information. Charles was more of a private person and would just take off sometimes without telling Pamela where he was going. Christina said this led to many arguments in the home. Christina was the only heir to Pamela's assets, and after the murder, she would sue her father Charles, alleging he owed half of the money that was collected from some rental homes, as well as the maintenance costs. Christina also alleged that Charles or someone on his behalf came into Pamela's home and took Pamela's clothing and shoes. Charles would deny these allegations, and his lawyer, Kentley Fairchild, would say that upon Pamela's death, the defendant had every right to enter the property since he was co-owner. Charles would also say that Christina was adopted and had lost contact with him and Pamela after she went off to college. As suspicious as this is, the investigators have not said whether Charles is a person of interest or not. As of 2020, the investigators have not released any information on possible suspects and the case still remains a mystery. On the night of June 10, 2011, Shane Fell would leave Rum Runners Pool Hall in New Orleans, Louisiana after a night of drinks and pool with friends and his brother. Shane would get in a car accident only 5 minutes away, and his brother Brett would happen to call him at 12:40 a.m. That's when Shane told his brother that he was in a single car accident and the car had flipped over. Brett decided to head where his brother was. A few minutes later, Shane would call Brett again to make sure he was on his way. This would be the last time Brett would ever hear from his brother. When Brett arrived 20 minutes later, he found police already on the scene, but there was no signs of Shane. When Brett had talked to Shane earlier, he said he wasn't injured and never mentioned being scared like someone was chasing him. Shane was also very familiar with the area he crashed in, which was off River Road in New Orleans. Since his disappearance, his bank cards have never been used and nobody has heard from him. Some other information that investigators possibly had was Shane's cell phone pinged for 5 days after his disappearance, but the cell phone was never found. Also, a couple in a PT Cruiser had stopped and asked Shane the night of the accident if he needed help, but he declined because his brother was on his way. His family speculates that Shane most likely sustained injuries and left the scene confused. They think he might have lost his memory and attempted to go back to Savannah, Georgia, where he had previously lived for a few years. On the family's Help Find Shane Fell Facebook page, there are some posts regarding a couple homeless men that has been spotted which resemble Shane. One of the homeless men was found in Tamaulipas, Mexico, and acknowledges that he has no memory of who he is or where he is from. The family reached out, but unfortunately it wasn't Shane. The other homeless man was seen in Veracruz, Mexico, and has been verified as an American. Members on Facebook are trying to get a DNA sample of the man to determine if it might be Shane Fell. However, as of 2020, Shane Michael Fell remains missing and the case is unsolved. On June 18, 1986, police in Louisiana received a strange call from a person stating there were two bodies under a bridge in Slidell, Louisiana. The police were instructed by the caller to meet at the State Tourist Information Center on I-10 in the St. Tammany Parish. However, when they arrived at the State Tourist Information Center, no one was there. They would take it upon themselves to search around I-10 and I-59 bridges for the bodies, but found nothing. The next day, two people out fishing would discover the body of an unidentified female floating in Lake Pontchartrain. The body was discovered east of I-10 about 50 yards from the community of North Shore. The body was found with a plastic bag over her head, secured with duct tape, and had a 22-pound red-colored weight attached to the body's neck. She was completely nude and had numerous stab wounds to her face. The coroner stated that the female had died around 36 hours prior to being discovered. Ultimately, the cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. However, they couldn't say for sure if this was from drowning, strangulation, or suffocation. Investigators think she might have been married because of markings on her ring finger. During the autopsy, it was discovered she was 3 months pregnant. She was also found to have breast implants, but no serial number was found. Investigators contacted 175 different plastic surgeons, but turned up nothing. Investigators believe the Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe was not from the Slidell area, and likely her body was dumped between Bayou Lacombe and Wrigley's Pass. As of 2020, the Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe has never been identified, and the case still remains unsolved. Bambi Luann Brantley was born on November 5, 1960. She moved to Leesville, Louisiana in 1986 from Memphis, Tennessee at the age of 25 and 3 months later disappeared without a trace. She was last seen in Leesville, Louisiana on October 22, 1986, walking on Highway 8 toward Tower Trailer Park from Lebo's convenience store. She had purchased a drink at Lebo's and used the payphone outside to call her brother Roddy. Bambi did not speak to her brother directly, but she told whoever answered the phone to tell her brother to come home and to bring her car so she could go to see her boyfriend. Authorities believe she walked back home after leaving the store because the drink container from the store was found on the floor of her residence. Her brother arrived to the home that they shared within 30 minutes and did not see Bambi, but did see the drink that she had bought. Roddy left the car and the keys for her and rode back to the pit grill with a friend. When Roddy returned home in the early morning hours, the car was in the driveway, the drink was still in the same spot, and Bambi was nowhere to be found. Bambi not being home was completely out of character for her, and her brother ultimately reported her missing to the Leesville Police Department. 2 other women close to Brantley's age, who physically resembled her, disappeared from the same area and under similar circumstances. Karen Hill in 1988 and Pamela Miller in 1989. Hill was found raped, shot to death, and tied to a tree 10 miles away. Samuel Galbraith was a soldier at Fort Polk and was in the Leesville area from December 1987 through June of 1990. During his time at Fort Polk, there were multiple women reported missing and ultimately found murdered in areas close to Galbraith's location. Galbraith pleaded guilty to manslaughter in Karen Hill's case and was sentenced to 71 years in prison. Miller's skeletal remains were found at Fort Polk in December 1989. Her murder has never been solved. It's unclear whether these cases are related to Brantley's. In fact, Bambi was one of 5 women, all white, about the same age, with blonde hair, and all of whom disappeared in Leesville between 1980 and 1990. The 4 other women were all found deceased, but there's never been any sign of Bambi. There's one other common factor. In 4 of the 5 cases, including Bambi Brantley's case, investigators say they disappeared from a convenience store. One of the other women was Tammy Call, and she disappeared on February 20th, 1990. She was 15 years old and did not get off the school bus that afternoon at her home in Leesville, Louisiana. She was then reported missing by her parents. The Vernon Parish Sheriff's Office began an investigation into Tammy's disappearance. Tammy had arrived at Leesville High School the morning that she went missing and met with a friend. The 2 girls decided to skip school and were walking back to the school parking lot where the friend's boyfriend was waiting in his vehicle. But before they made it to his car, the girls were stopped by a teacher and told to go back into the building. Tammy's friend told the teacher that she was headed to get her books from the car, and Tammy returned to the school building. Tammy's friend left the school with her boyfriend. Tammy apparently walked through the school building and exited the back door. When detectives interviewed the friend and boyfriend, they claimed that they did not see Tammy again that day. A schoolmate of Tammy's stated that while on the way to school that morning, they saw Tammy walking down the highway. Months later, Tammy's backpack was found in some brush along a walking trail leading to Bellevue Road. 7 years later, her remains were found in a secluded area off Highway 10. Her murder remains unsolved as of 2020.